My 9-year-old son grabbed my hand at the airport and whispered, "Mom, if we go home tonight, we're going to die." I almost laughed, but something in his eyes stopped me. That night, I didn't go home, and from a distance, I watched my house burn. What I didn't know yet was that the man who kissed me goodbye planned it. The night felt ordinary. That was the most dangerous part. The parking garage at Austin Bergstrom Airport was cold and quiet under harsh fluorescent lights. Cars idled, doors slammed. People rushed past with suitcases. Everything felt normal, predictable. Daniel pulled me into a hug. It was firm, familiar, safe. "I'll only be gone a few days," he said softly. "Lock the doors, don't stay up too late." I smiled. "Text me when you land." "Of course." He kissed my forehead, then crouched down in front of Ethan. "Take care of Mom while I'm gone, okay?" Ethan didn't smile. He just nodded once, his eyes fixed on Daniel's face. I noticed, but I didn't question it. Daniel stood, grabbed his bag, and gave me one last look. "I love you." "I love you too." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched until he was gone. A familiar emptiness settled in my chest. It always did when he left. It would pass. "Come on," I said, opening the car door. "Let's go home." I helped Ethan into the back seat and pulled his jacket closed. That was when he grabbed my wrist, hard. I flinched. "Ethan?" He didn't let go. "Mom," he whispered. I leaned closer. "What is it?" His fingers tightened, trembling. "Don't take us home tonight." I let out a small, confused laugh. "What?" "Please," he said. "We can't go home." I thought he was just scared. Kids get like that when a parent leaves. "It's okay," I said gently. "Dad will be back soon." But he didn't relax. He just stared at me, eyes wide and steady. "Mom," his voice dropped even lower. "If we go home, we're going to die." The words didn't land right away. They just hung there, cold, sharp. "That's not funny," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "I'm not joking." His voice cracked, but he didn't cry. I heard him. My chest tightened. "Heard who?" "Dad." The noise of the garage faded into the background. "What do you mean?" I asked. "This morning," he whispered. "He was on the phone." I opened my mouth, but he shook his head quickly. I wasn't trying to listen. I just went to get water. He didn't see me. My pulse began to rise. "And?" I asked. Ethan's grip tightened. He said, "It has to look like an accident." A cold sensation slid down my spine. "No," I said quickly. "You misunderstood. He was talking about work." Ethan shook his head. "No." His voice was different. Different. The word lingered. "He said it has to be done tonight," Ethan added. My breath caught. I looked at him more carefully now. His face was pale. His lips pressed tight. His eyes weren't panicked. They were certain. "Ethan," I said slowly, "what else did you hear?" He hesitated. He said, "After we're asleep, it'll be easier." Something inside me shifted. A small, quiet crack. "No," I whispered, but it didn't sound convincing anymore. "He sounded scary, Mom," Ethan said. "I've never heard him like that." Silence pressed in around us, and then memories surfaced. A car parked outside our house 2 nights ago, engine off, just sitting there. I had ignored it. Ethan telling me last week he didn't like one of Daniel's business partners. I told him not to be rude. The security camera glitching last night. Daniel said it was nothing. I swallowed. My hand was still in Ethan's grip, numb now. "Mom," he said softly, "you have to believe me this time. This time." The words hit harder than anything else. How many times had I dismissed him? I looked toward the terminal where Daniel had disappeared. He was gone. And suddenly, something felt wrong. Not empty. Wrong. I looked back at Ethan. He wasn't crying. He was waiting for me to decide. I took a slow breath. Part of me clung to logic, to the man I had trusted for 10 years. The other part listened, to my son, to the fear I couldn't explain. "Okay," I said quietly. Ethan's grip loosened slightly. "We won't go home." He let out a long breath, like he had been holding it in for hours. I closed the car door and walked to the driver's seat. My hands trembled as I started the engine. I told myself I was just being careful, just humoring a scared child, nothing more. But when I pulled out of the parking spot, I didn't turn toward home. I turned the other way, and I didn't know it yet, that this was the moment my life began to break. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go home. The exit ramp spiraled down out of the parking garage, the city opening up in front of me, streetlights stretching into the distance, cars moving like nothing had changed. Everything looked normal, too normal. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked from the back seat. I swallowed. "Just driving for a bit." My hands stayed tight on the wheel. I almost turned toward our neighborhood out of habit. The route was automatic after so many years. At the last second, I corrected myself and veered the other way. Ethan didn't say anything after that, but I could feel his eyes on me through the rear view mirror, watching, waiting. I drove aimlessly for several minutes, my thoughts running in circles. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Daniel wasn't that kind of man. He couldn't be. The way he held me, the way he spoke, the way he had just looked at us minutes ago. There was no hesitation, no distance, nothing cold. Unless... I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Ethan," I said carefully, "tell me exactly what you heard. Everything." He shifted slightly in his seat. "I was getting water," he said. "Dad was in his office. The door wasn't closed all the way." I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. "He was on the phone," Ethan continued. He sounded different, like he was mad but quiet. "Do you remember the words?" I asked. Ethan hesitated. "Not all of them," he said, "but I heard, 'Tonight has to be clean, and no mistakes this time.'" A chill crept into my chest. "And then?" I asked. "He said it has to look like an accident," Ethan whispered. My stomach twisted. "And after that?" Ethan's voice dropped even lower. He said, "Once they're asleep, it's easy." The car suddenly felt smaller, tighter. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. "He could have been talking about work," I said, but the words sounded hollow now. Ethan didn't respond. That silence said more than anything else. I drove past a row of closed shops, neon signs flickering in empty windows. The road grew quieter as we moved farther from the main streets. Then Ethan spoke again. "He said things before." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "Not like today," he said quickly, "but weird things." I glanced at him in the mirror. "Like what?" Ethan looked down at his hands. "Sometimes he gets really mad when he thinks no one's watching," he said. "He talks to himself." I felt a slow, creeping unease spread through me. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "He told me not to." A cold wave ran through my body. "He told you not to tell me?" I repeated. Ethan nodded. "He said you'd get worried, and that it would cause problems." Problems. The word echoed in my head. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, has anything else happened? Anything at all?" He hesitated again. "Last week," he said, "there was a truck outside our house." My hands tightened on the wheel. "What kind of truck?" "A gray one," he said. "It was there for a long time, no lights. No one got out." I remembered. I had seen it too. I just ignored it. "I thought it was a neighbor," I said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "It left when Dad came outside." My chest tightened. The road ahead blurred slightly as my mind tried to catch up. "Anything else?" I asked. Ethan nodded again, slower this time. "The cameras," he said. "They stopped working last night. "I know," I said quickly. "Your dad said it was a glitch." Ethan looked up. He was the one who turned them off. My breath caught. "How do you know that?" "I saw him," Ethan said. "He was on his phone. Then the cameras went dark." Silence filled the car again, but this time it was heavier. I drove without speaking, my thoughts no longer scattered but aligning, one by one, like pieces of something I didn't want to see. The truck, the cameras, the phone call, the words. It has to look like an accident. Tonight, after they're asleep, I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to breathe. "Okay," I said finally. Ethan looked up. "What are we going to do?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. Not yet. I turned onto a darker road lined with trees and barely any traffic. The city noise faded behind us. Then I slowed the car and pulled into a narrow side street that overlooked the entrance to our neighborhood from a distance. I turned off the engine. The silence rushed in instantly. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Why are we stopping?" I kept my eyes fixed ahead. "Because I need to see something," I said. The entrance to our neighborhood sat about 100 yards away, lit by a single overhead lamp. The gate stood still, quiet, like it always did at this hour. Everything looked normal. Too normal. We waited. Minutes passed. Neither of us spoke. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A vehicle approached slowly. My heart began to pound. It wasn't one of our neighbors. I knew every car that usually came through at this hour. This one was different. A dark gray pickup truck. It slowed as it reached the gate, paused, then the barrier lifted almost immediately. No code, no delay. The truck rolled inside. I felt my fingers go numb on the steering wheel. "Mom," Ethan whispered. I didn't answer, because I was already watching. The truck turned and headed straight toward our street. A cold realization settled deep in my chest. We hadn't made a mistake. We had just made it out in time. The truck didn't slow down. It moved with purpose. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes fixed on the road leading into our neighborhood. The headlights cut through the darkness, steady and controlled, like whoever was driving already knew exactly where they were going. "Mom." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "I see it," I said. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the entire car. The truck passed under the streetlight. Gray, clean, no markings. It didn't belong here. It turned once, then again, straight toward our street. My stomach dropped. That's our block," I whispered. Ethan didn't respond. I didn't need him to. We both knew. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my palms damp, my breath shallow. "Stay down," I said quickly. Ethan slid lower in the back seat without asking why. I adjusted my position slightly, just enough to see without being seen. The truck slowed, then stopped, right in front of our house. Time seemed to stretch. For a second, nothing happened. No doors opened. No movement, just the quiet hum of the engine idling in the dark. Then, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Dark clothes, baseball cap pulled low. The passenger side opened too. Another man. Neither of them looked around. They didn't hesitate. They walked straight to our front gate. I held my breath. "Mom," Ethan whispered again. "Don't look," I said under my breath. But I couldn't look away. One of the men reached into his pocket. I expected tools, something to break in. Instead, a soft click. The gate unlocked, opened. My chest tightened so suddenly it hurt. No forced entry, no hesitation. They walked in like they belonged there, like they had done this before. "Keys," I whispered. The word barely left my lips. The second man stepped up to the front door. Another small movement, another click. The door opened. Just like that, they disappeared inside. I felt my body go cold. This wasn't a robbery. Robbers don't have keys. Robbers don't move like that. They don't know exactly where to go. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to steady my breathing. "Mom, what are they doing?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking now. I didn't answer. Because I already knew. I just didn't want to say it out loud. The house stayed dark for a few seconds. Then, a faint light flickered inside. Not the ceiling lights. Flashlights, moving slowly, methodically, room to room. They weren't searching, they were checking, waiting for something or someone. My pulse roared in my ears. Minutes passed. 5, 10. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, something changed. At first, it was subtle. A faint shimmer behind the curtains, then a flicker. Orange. My eyes widened. "No," I whispered. The light grew stronger, faster, hungry. A glow spread across the front windows. Then, flames. They burst upwards so suddenly it made me flinch. One curtain caught, then another. Fire crawled along the edges of the windows, licking the glass like it had been waiting to be released. "Mom!" Ethan's voice broke. The smell hit next. Gasoline. Sharp, thick, unmistakable. My stomach turned violently. "They're burning it," I said, my voice barely holding together. The flames spread faster than anything I had ever seen. Up the walls, across the ceiling, a second window shattered with a sharp crack, sending sparks into the night. If we had gone home, if we had followed routine, we would be inside right now, asleep, trapped. A sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. Ethan started crying, quiet and broken, pressing himself into the seat. "Mom, our house." I couldn't answer. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Everything we owned. Every memory, every piece of our life, being swallowed in seconds. Then, my phone vibrated. The sudden sound made me jump. I fumbled for it, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. A message from Daniel. I stared at the screen. For a second, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Then I did. "Just boarded. You two are probably asleep by now. Love you." My vision blurred, the fire reflected in the windshield, dancing across the screen as I read the words again. "Love you." A dry, hollow sound escaped my mouth. A laugh. It didn't sound like mine. Ethan looked up at me, frightened. "Mom!" I locked the phone and threw it into the console. My entire body was shaking now, not from fear, from something deeper, something breaking. He knew. He had known exactly what would happen tonight, and he still kissed me goodbye. Still told me to sleep early, still told me to lock the doors. A sudden movement snapped my attention back to the house. The front door burst open. The two men ran out fast, controlled, not panicked. They didn't look back, they didn't hesitate. They jumped into the truck, the engine roared, and within seconds, they were gone. Vanishing into the night just as distant sirens began to rise in the distance, I sat there frozen, watching the flames climb higher, watching the life I thought I had burned away. My hand slowly tightened around the steering wheel. Ethan's voice came from behind me, small and shaking. "Mom, what do we do?" I stared straight ahead, at the fire, at the truth, and for the first time, I understood. We weren't just running from strangers, we were running from him. I took a slow breath, then another. My voice came out low, steady. "We disappear." I didn't drive back, not even close. By the time the first fire truck screamed past the main road behind us, I had already turned in the opposite direction. I kept my headlights low, my speed steady, forcing myself not to look in the rear-view mirror too often. But every few seconds, I still did. Every pair of headlights felt like it was following us. Every turn felt like a mistake. Ethan stayed quiet in the back seat. Too quiet. "Mom," he finally said. "Yeah? Are we going to die?" The question hit harder than anything else that night. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "No," I said, my voice firm. "Not tonight." He didn't respond, but I could feel him holding on to that answer. I drove through smaller streets, avoiding main roads, letting instinct guide me more than logic. My phone buzzed again somewhere in the console. I didn't touch it. I already knew who it was. If Daniel thought we were home, if he believed his plan had worked, that was the only advantage we had. And I wasn't about to lose it. I needed somewhere he couldn't predict. Somewhere he didn't control. Somewhere outside the life we had built together. My mind raced through names, friends, neighbors, family. No, everyone knew Daniel. Everyone trusted him. If I showed up at any of their doors in the middle of the night, shaking, terrified, claiming my husband had just tried to kill us, they would call him. Not the police. Him. I swallowed hard. There was only one person left, a name I hadn't thought about in years, Margaret Hayes. The memory surfaced slowly. My father's voice, calm, serious. If anything ever feels wrong, he had told me once, long before he died, you go to her. No questions, no hesitation. I had laughed back then, thought he was being overly cautious. Now, I turned the wheel sharply. We're going to see someone, Mitt, I said. Ethan shifted slightly. Who? Someone your grandfather trusted. The city grew quieter as we moved farther out. Streetlights thinned. Buildings became older, more worn down, like parts of the city people forgot. My fuel light blinked on. Of course. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay focused. We didn't have time to stop. We didn't have time for anything except moving forward. Finally, I turned onto a narrow street lined with aging brick buildings. Most of the windows were dark. A flickering sign buzzed weakly above a small doorway. I slowed the car. There it was. Hayes Legal Advisory. The sign was faded, almost erased by time. I parked across the street, my hands still trembling. Ethan had fallen half asleep, his head leaning against the window. Tear tracks still marked his cheeks. I turned off the engine. The silence rushed in. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing, trying to gather whatever strength I had left. Then I stepped out of the car, walked around, and opened the back door. Ethan, I said softly, we're here. He stirred, blinking slowly. Where are we? Safe, I said. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I needed it to be. I helped him out, wrapping my arm around him as we crossed the street. The night air felt colder now, heavier. I raised my hand and knocked. Once, twice, nothing. My heart sank. Then, the door clicked. It opened just enough to reveal a woman standing in the shadows, older, sharp eyes, completely awake. She looked at me, then at Ethan. No surprise, no confusion, just recognition. Come in, she said. I froze for half a second. How do you? Inside, she repeated, firmer this time. I didn't argue. I stepped in quickly, pulling Ethan with me. The door shut behind us with a solid final sound. Locks clicked into place. 1, 2, 3. The room was small, neat, filled with the smell of paper and something herbal. Tea, maybe. The lights were dim, but steady. Sit, she said. I guided Ethan to a worn couch. He collapsed into it almost instantly, exhaustion finally taking over. I remained standing. My legs felt weak, my thoughts scattered. My voice broke. I cleared my throat. My house, it burned. There were men. I know, she said calmly. The words stopped me cold. You? No? I repeated. She studied me for a long second. Then she walked to a cabinet, pulled out a cup, and poured hot tea without asking. Drink, she said, placing it in front of me. My hands shook as I took it. I need you to tell me everything, she added. I nodded, and I did. From the parking garage, to Ethan's warning, to the truck, the keys, the fire, the message. I didn't leave anything out. She didn't interrupt once. She just listened, still, focused, like she had been waiting for this story. When I finished, the room fell silent. I could hear my own breathing, uneven, shallow. Finally, she spoke. You made the right choice. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You believe me? I asked. She looked at me directly. I don't believe you, she said. I know. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? She walked to a metal cabinet in the corner and unlocked it. From inside, she pulled out a thick folder, worn, sealed. She placed it on the table between us. Your father left this with me, she said. My heart skipped. My father? I whispered. He didn't trust your husband, she continued. The room seemed to tilt. That's not possible, I said. Daniel, he saw something you didn't, she cut in. My fingers tightened around the cup. What is this? I asked, nodding toward the folder. She untied the string slowly. Inside were documents, statements, numbers. More than I could process at a glance. Everything your father left behind, she said. He didn't leave much, I said automatically. Just the house and… No, she said quietly. That's what your husband believes. My chest tightened. What are you talking about? She met my eyes. Your son, she said. What about him? He's worth more than you think. I felt my breath catch. What does that mean? She paused, then spoke slowly. Your father placed everything into a trust. The word hit me like a weight. A trust? I repeated. She nodded. Millions. The room went silent. I stared at her, unable to process it. That's not possible, I whispered. It is, she said. And there's only one condition. My pulse pounded in my ears. What condition? Her voice didn't change. Your son gets it at 25. I swallowed. And until then? She held my gaze. He has a legal guardian. A cold realization began to form, slow, terrible. Who? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Your husband. Everything inside me dropped. I shook my head. No, that doesn't… If you and your son die, she continued, her voice calm and precise, he becomes the sole controller of that money. The room spun, the fire, the keys, the message, all of it aligned. Not random, not chaos. A plan, a perfect calculated plan. I covered my mouth, a sound breaking out of me before I could stop it. Oh my God. I looked toward Ethan asleep on the couch. Small, vulnerable, alive. And I understood. This was never about me. It was about him. And I had been standing in the way. I lowered my hands slowly, my voice barely there. He was going to kill us, I whispered. Margaret didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because now, I finally saw the truth, and there was no going back. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. The office was silent except for the faint ticking of a wall clock and Ethan's slow breathing from the couch. I sat across from Margaret, staring at the folder still open on the table, numbers and documents blurring together. Millions. Not a house, not savings, millions, and all of it tied to my son. I pressed my hands together, trying to stop them from shaking. He planned all of this, I said quietly. Margaret didn't answer right away. She was watching me, measuring. Yes, she said finally. And he didn't rush it. A chill moved through me. How long? I asked. Long enough to understand exactly what he needed to do, she replied. I looked down at the documents again. Trust agreements, legal clauses, conditions, all written in language I had never paid attention to, because I trusted him. He needed both of us gone, I whispered. Margaret nodded. You are the obstacle, she said. Your son is the key. My chest tightened. And the fire? I asked. A controlled narrative, she said. House fire. Tragic. No survivors. My stomach turned. Insurance? I asked. Likely increased recently, she replied, with accidental death coverage. I closed my eyes. Of course. Everything was aligning now. Not chaos, not impulse. A system. A plan built piece by piece. I exhaled slowly. What about the men? I asked. Hired, she said. Not professionals, but experienced enough. How do you know? Because professionals don't leave variables, she said. And tonight, you were a variable. I looked toward Ethan again, curled up, exhausted, alive. Because he listened. Because I finally listened. What happens now? I asked. Margaret leaned back slightly. Right now, she said, your husband believes you are dead. The words landed heavy. And that's good? I asked. It's the only advantage you have, she replied. I swallowed. If he finds out we're alive, he becomes unpredictable, she said, and dangerous in ways you can't control. Silence settled between us. I nodded slowly. Then we don't tell him, I said. Correct. My mind started moving faster now. Less fear, more focus. He'll go back, I said. To the house. Margaret's eyes sharpened slightly. Yes. He's not done, I continued. He needs something. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into the folder and pulled out a single sheet. Your son mentioned something, she said. A notebook. I felt my stomach drop. The safe, I said. Margaret nodded. He didn't risk everything just for the trust, she said. There's something else. Blackmail? I asked. Protection, she corrected. Leverage. I leaned back slightly, trying to process it. He burns the house, I said slowly. Kills us, then comes back later to get it. Yes. And if it's gone, he loses control, she said. I stared at the table. So that's where we hit him. Margaret didn't smile. But there was something in her expression. Approval. Exactly, she said. I felt something shift inside me. Fear was still there, but it wasn't leading anymore. What about the police? I asked. We involve them carefully, she said. Not with a story, with evidence. I nodded. What do we have? I asked. Margaret began counting, calm and precise. Arson pattern, she said. Entry without force, your testimony. That's not enough, I said. No, she agreed. She looked toward Ethan. And him. My chest tightened. He's a child, I said. He's a witness, she replied. I didn't like that, not at all. There's more, she added. What? Your husband's mistakes, she said. I frowned. He made mistakes? Everyone does, she said. Especially when they think they've already won. I thought about the message. Love you. Sent at the exact moment our house was burning. A perfect alibi. Too perfect. He'll come back for the safe, I said again. Yes, she said. And when he does... Margaret leaned forward slightly. That's when we take everything from him. The words settled deep, final, cold. I took a slow breath. What do you need me to do? For now? She said. Nothing. I looked at her. That's it? That's the hardest part, she said. You stay invisible. I glanced down at my hands, still shaking, but steadier than before. And Ethan? I asked. He stays with you, she said. Always. I nodded. There was no other option. A soft sound came from the couch. Ethan stirred slightly, shifting in his sleep. I stood and walked over, kneeling beside him. His face was calmer now, but the tension hadn't fully left his body. I brushed his hair back gently. I'm here, I whispered. He didn't wake, but his breathing steadied. I stayed there for a moment longer, then stood. When I turned back, Margaret was already closing the folder. This isn't over, she said. I met her gaze. I know. He's going to move fast now, she added. Desperation changes people. He already changed, I said quietly. She didn't argue. Get some rest if you can, she said. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Instead, I walked back to the chair and sat down again. My body was exhausted. My mind wasn't, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about stopping him. And the only way to do that was to let him think he had already won. I leaned back slightly, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time that night, I stopped feeling like prey and started thinking like someone who was about to fight back. Morning came without light. I didn't remember closing my eyes, but I must have for a few minutes. When I opened them, the room looked the same, dim, quiet, sealed off from the world outside. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came back at once. The fire, the truck, Daniel. I sat up quickly. Ethan was still asleep on the couch, curled on his side, one hand clutching the edge of a blanket Margaret must have placed over him during the night. Alive. I held on to that for a second. Then I stood. Margaret was already awake, standing near the small desk, speaking quietly on the phone. Her tone was calm, measured, nothing like the storm that had taken over my life. She ended the call and looked at me. "They're calling it an accident," she said. My stomach tightened. "Of course they are." "For now," she added. I nodded slowly. That made sense. Fire, night, no survivors. Clean, too clean. "What about the house?" I asked. "Still active," she said. "Fire department contained it, but investigators are on site." I swallowed. "And bodies?" She watched me carefully. "None found." Relief hit me so fast it made me dizzy, not because I thought we were dead, but because now there was proof we weren't, even if no one knew it yet. "They'll start asking questions," I said. "Yes," she replied, "but not the right ones." I crossed my arms, trying to steady myself. "What do we do now?" Margaret stepped closer and placed a thin folder on the table. "We build something stronger than a story," she said. I opened it. Inside were notes, timelines, names, evidence. "Walk me through it," I said. She nodded. "First entry," she said. "No forced break-in, that means access." "Keys," I said. "Yes, only Daniel and I have them." "Which makes him directly connected," she said. I felt a cold clarity settle in. "Second," she continued, "fire pattern." She pulled out a printed image. "Origin point, bedrooms." My throat tightened. "They wanted us asleep." She nodded once. "Accelerant used. Likely gasoline." I could almost smell it again, sharp, burning. "Third," she said, "timing." She handed me another sheet. "Emergency call logs, first 911 call came from a neighbor." "And there was an earlier attempt," she said. I looked up. "What do you mean?" "An incomplete call," she said. "Disconnected before dispatch." A chill ran through me. "Someone tried to stop it. Or delay it," she said. I exhaled slowly. Of course. More time. More certainty. "Fourth," she said, "your husband's alibi." I didn't want to hear it, but I needed to. "He was at the airport," I said. "Boarding." "Yes," she said. "His phone confirms that." I frowned. "But?" She looked at me. "His car doesn't." My breath caught. "What?" "Vehicle GPS," she said. "Shows movement inconsistent with his timeline." My mind raced. "He went back," I whispered. "Or someone used his vehicle," she said. "Either way, it breaks the clean alibi." I felt something tighten inside me, a shift, from fear to focus. "What else?" I asked. Margaret paused, then looked toward Ethan. "He's the key," she said. I followed her gaze. "He's a child," I said quietly. "He's a witness," she repeated. I shook my head slightly. "He's been through enough." "And he might be the only one who heard your husband say what he did," she said. I didn't argue, because I knew she was right. Still, I hated it. "What exactly did he hear?" she asked. I took a breath. "He said Daniel talked about making it look like an accident," I said. "About doing it after we were asleep." Margaret nodded. "Premeditation," she said. The word felt heavy, real, dangerous. "And there's more," I added. She waited. "Ethan said he saw Daniel turn off the cameras." Her eyes sharpened. "That's important." "And the truck," I said. "It was there before, days ago." "Surveillance," she said. "Everything lined up. Too perfectly." "Then we have motive," she continued. "The trust," I said. She nodded. "And his debts." I looked up. "You're sure about that?" "I've been tracking irregularities," she said. "Investments, losses, unreported transactions." "So he was desperate," I said. "Yes." I leaned back slightly. "So we have access, method, motive, and behavior," she added. I frowned. "What behavior?" She slid my phone across the table. I stared at it. I hadn't touched it since last night. "Turn it on," she said. My hands hesitated. Then I did. The screen lit up, messages, missed calls, all from Daniel. I opened the latest one. "Emily, where are you? Please answer. I'm trying to reach you." Another. "I just landed. They said there was a fire. Please tell me you're okay." Another. "I'm coming back. Call me." My stomach twisted. He was playing the role. Perfectly. "He's panicking," I said. Margaret shook her head slightly. "He's performing." I stared at the messages again. The tone, the urgency. So believable. So practiced. "He thinks we're dead," I said slowly. "Yes. And now he's trying to confirm it." "Exactly." I locked the phone. My hands were steady now. Completely steady. "So we let him believe it," I said. Margaret nodded. "For now." I exhaled. "And the safe?" I asked. She leaned forward slightly. "He'll go back for it," she said. "Soon. Because he can't risk losing what's inside." "Yes." I felt it. The shift again, this time stronger. "We take it first," I said. Margaret held my gaze. "That's the plan." I nodded slowly. Every piece was in place. Not perfect, but enough. I looked toward Ethan again, still asleep, still safe. And for the first time since last night, I felt something different. Not fear, not confusion. Control. "He thought he planned everything," I said quietly. Margaret didn't respond. She didn't need to, because now we were planning too. By the afternoon, everything was in motion. I hadn't stepped outside once. Margaret handled everything through calls, short, precise conversations that revealed nothing but moved everything forward. I stayed in the back room with Ethan, watching the hours pass, feeling the tension build with every minute. Daniel kept calling. I didn't answer, but I read every message, each one more urgent than the last. "Emily, please, I'm at the house. I need to know you're okay." "I talked to the police. They can't find you. Where are you? Just tell me you're safe." I stared at the screen, my chest tight. He was good, too good. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed him. Margaret stepped in quietly. "It's time," she said. I looked up. For what? To give him something to chase. I stood slowly. "What does that mean?" She placed a small object on the table. A key. Simple. Metal. Unremarkable. But I knew what it was supposed to represent. "The safe deposit box," I said. She nodded. "He believes the real assets are there," she said. "He always has." "And they're not?" "No," she said, "but he doesn't know that." I picked up the key. Cold, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight. "How do we get this to him?" I asked. Margaret's expression didn't change. "We don't," she said. "Someone else does." An hour later, I understood what she meant. She made a call to a man named Derek, former business associate of Daniel's, drowning in debt, desperate, perfect. I didn't hear the full conversation, but I caught enough. Margaret offered him a way out, money, in exchange for a story. By the time she hung up, it was already set. "He'll meet Daniel tonight," she said. "And say what?" I asked. "That you contacted him before the fire," she said. "Gave him a key, told him to hold on to it." I felt a strange twist in my chest. "And Daniel will believe that?" "He wants to believe it," she said. "That's enough." I nodded slowly, because she was right. Desperate people don't question hope. They chase it. Night came faster than I expected. The room felt smaller, heavier. Ethan sat beside me, drawing quietly on a piece of paper Margaret had given him. His lines were uneven, darker than usual. "You okay?" I asked softly. He nodded, but he didn't look up. "Is Dad coming?" he asked after a moment. The question landed hard. "No," I said gently. "Not here." He pressed his lips together, then nodded again. I didn't push. I couldn't. Around 9 p.m., Margaret's phone rang. She answered immediately, listened, then ended the call. "He took the bait," she said. My stomach tightened. What happened? Derek met him in a parking lot, she said. Told him everything. And? Margaret looked at me. He paid him. Of course he did. How much? Enough to hurt, she said. I exhaled slowly. He believes it's real, I said. Yes. I stared at the table, then asked the question I had been avoiding. What will he do now? Margaret didn't hesitate. He'll go to the bank. The words settled deep. He's going to try to access the box, I said. Yes, and he'll need documentation, which he doesn't have, she said. I looked up. But he'll try anyway. He'll do more than try, she said. He'll fake it. A cold wave ran through me. Forgery, I said. Authorization papers. Death certificate, she added. My chest tightened. He's going to declare us dead. Yes. Silence filled the room. Not shock, not anymore. Just inevitability. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning, she said. I nodded slowly. Everything was aligning, exactly the way she said it would. And the bank? I asked. Already prepared, she said. For what? She held my gaze. For him. It took me a second to understand. Then it hit. You're working with them. And others, she said. My pulse quickened. Police? She didn't answer directly, but she didn't need to. I leaned back slightly. This is it, I said. This is where he walks in. And doesn't walk out the same, she replied. I looked toward Ethan, still drawing, still quiet. I walked over and knelt beside him. What are you drawing? I asked. He turned the paper slightly. It was our house. Before the fire, simple lines, but clear. I swallowed. It's good, I said softly. He nodded, then added very quietly, I heard him again that day. My heart stopped. What do you mean? Ethan looked up at me. I forgot before, he said, but I remember now. I leaned closer. What did he say? Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. He said, after tonight, everything changes. The words hit like a final piece falling into place. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. Thank you for telling me, I said. He nodded. I stood slowly and turned back to Margaret. He's going to come in confident, I said. Yes. He thinks he's about to win. Yes. I took a breath, then another. And tomorrow? Margaret watched me carefully. Tomorrow, I said, my voice steady now, we take everything from him. She didn't smile, but I saw it. That quiet confirmation. The plan was set. There was no turning back. And somewhere out there, Daniel Carter believed he was one step away from getting everything he wanted. He had no idea. He was walking straight into the end of it. I didn't feel nervous. That was the strangest part. As we walked through the private entrance of the bank, everything inside me felt still. Not calm, not safe, just focused. Ethan held my hand tightly. Margaret walked ahead of us, speaking quietly to a man in a dark suit, the branch manager. He nodded once, then opened a secured door and stepped aside. Everything is ready, he said. We moved inside. The room was smaller than I expected. No windows, thick walls, a single table in the center. Clean, controlled, a place built for secrets. Wait here, Margaret said. I nodded. Ethan sat beside me, silent, his hand still gripping mine. I could feel the tension in his fingers, but he didn't say anything. Neither did I. We didn't have to. Time stretched, every second heavier than the last. Then, footsteps, outside the door. Slow, confident. I knew that rhythm. I would have recognized it anywhere. The handle turned, the door opened, and Daniel stepped in. For a moment, everything stopped. He froze in the doorway, his face drained of color instantly, like something inside him had just collapsed. He was looking at me, at Ethan, alive, not burned, not gone. Alive. No, he whispered. The word barely formed. I stood slowly. My legs didn't shake. My voice didn't break. Looking for me? I asked. He took a step back, then another. This isn't, he started. This isn't possible. I held his gaze. It is, I said. His eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to me. You're supposed to be... He stopped himself. The silence filled the rest. I tilted my head slightly. Dead? I finished for him. His jaw tightened. For a split second, something real broke through. Not fear, not confusion, calculation. Then it was gone, replaced instantly. What is this? He said, his voice rising. Emily, I've been trying to find you. The house burned, I said calmly. I know, he said quickly. I went there. You thought we were inside, I said. He hesitated, just long enough. Then shook his head. No, I didn't know what to think. I watched him carefully. Every movement, every shift in his expression. He was adjusting, rebuilding the story, piece by piece, like he always did. Margaret stepped forward. Mr. Carter, she said evenly, before we continue, we need to address the documents you submitted. He turned toward her, irritation flashing. What documents? She placed a folder on the table. Authorization papers, she said, and a death certificate. The room went silent. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Forgery is a serious offense, Margaret continued, especially in a financial institution. His jaw tightened again. This is insane, he said. My wife and son are alive. Why would I... Exactly, I said. He looked at me. Really looked this time. Trying to read me. Trying to find control. Emily, he said, softer now. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Just talk to me. For a moment, that voice almost worked. Familiar, careful, convincing. Then I remembered the fire, the gasoline, the message. No, I said. The word landed flat, final. Something shifted in his eyes, not confusion anymore. Something darker. All right, he said slowly. His posture changed. Subtle, but clear. The mask was slipping. You want to do this here? He asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed the black notebook on the table. The air changed instantly. Daniel's eyes locked onto it. All the control he had been holding cracked. Just for a second. What is that? He asked, but his voice had already given him away. You know exactly what it is, I said. He didn't respond, didn't deny it, didn't move. Margaret stepped in. Would you like us to open it? She asked calmly. Silence. Daniel's breathing slowed, measured. Then he smiled, a small, controlled smile. You think this proves anything? He said. I held his gaze. No, I said. And then the door behind him opened. 2 men stepped in. Plain clothes, badges visible. Daniel didn't turn around, but I saw it. The moment he understood. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice quieter now. One of the men stepped forward. Daniel Carter, he said, we need you to come with us. Daniel let out a slow breath, then finally turned, looked at them, then back at me. You did this, he said. Not angry, not loud, just empty. I stepped closer. No, I said quietly. You did. For a second, he looked like he might say something else. Explain, defend, lie again. But he didn't, because there was nothing left to say. The officers moved in, hands on his arms. Cold metal clicked into place. Daniel didn't resist, didn't fight. He just stood there, looking at me. I didn't think you had it in you, he said softly. I met his gaze. I didn't either. They turned him toward the door. As they let him out, he stopped for a fraction of a second, looked back at Ethan, and for the first time, there was something there. Not love, not regret, just loss. Then he was gone. The door closed, and the room fell silent again. I stood there, staring at the empty space he left behind. My hands finally started to shake. Ethan's fingers tightened around mine. Mom, he whispered. I looked down at him. He was scared, but he was still here, still with me. I knelt beside him and pulled him close. "It's over," I said. But even as I said it, I knew the truth. This wasn't the end. It was just the moment everything finally broke. I didn't go to court. I didn't need to. By the time the trial began, everything that mattered had already happened in that room at the bank. The evidence was clear. The timeline was tight. The story he tried to build collapsed under its own weight. Margaret handled everything. She kept me updated, but never overwhelmed me. Dates, motions, charges, attempted murder, arson, fraud, forgery. Each word felt heavy, real, final. Daniel tried at first. Of course he did. He claimed confusion, said he thought we were dead, said he panicked, said the documents were a mistake, that the fire was an accident, that everything was just wrong timing. But the evidence didn't bend. The fire report showed intent. The entry showed access. The messages showed calculation. And then there was the video. I never watched it. I didn't need to hear his voice saying those words again, but I knew what it contained. The plan, the timing, the certainty. After that, there was nothing left for him to hide behind. The verdict came on a quiet morning. Margaret called me just after 10. "It's done," she said. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. "How long?" I asked. "Long enough," she said. That was all I needed. When I hung up, I sat there for a while, staring at nothing. No relief, not the kind I expected. Just stillness, like something that had been holding me tight for weeks had finally let go, and I didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. "Mom?" Ethan's voice pulled me back. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, holding a small notebook in his hands. His shoulders looked lighter now, not completely free, but no longer carrying something too heavy for his age. "It's over," I said softly. He studied my face, then nodded. "Okay," he said. Just that. No questions, no tears, just acceptance. We moved a month later. A small house on the edge of the city. Quiet, simple, nothing like the one we lost. No gates, no cameras, no secrets. At first, the silence there felt strange, too open, too honest. But slowly, it changed. Ethan started sleeping through the night again. No more waking up in silence. No more watching shadows in the dark. He laughed more. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough. Enough for me to notice. Enough for me to breathe. One afternoon, I found him sitting on the floor by the window, drawing again. I leaned against the doorway. "What are you working on?" I asked. He turned the page toward me. It was a house, not the old one, this one. Smaller, but brighter. There were two figures standing in front of it, and for the first time in a long time, there was no fire. "It's nice," I said. He nodded. "I like this one better." I smiled. "So do I." He hesitated for a second, then asked quietly, "Did you know before?" The question caught me off guard. "Know what?" "About Dad," he said. I shook my head. "No," I said honestly. He looked down at the drawing. "I did," he said. My chest tightened. I stepped closer. "What do you mean?" He shrugged slightly. "I didn't know everything," he said. "But I knew something wasn't right." I sat beside him. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He didn't answer right away. Then because he told me not to. The words landed softly, but they stayed. I exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," I said. He looked up. "For what?" "For not listening," I said. He thought about that, then shook his head. "You listened," he said. "Eventually." That word lingered. Eventually. I nodded. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Eventually." We sat there in silence for a while, the afternoon light filling the room. No tension, no fear, just space. Later that night, after Ethan went to bed, I stood by the window alone. The street outside was calm, still, safe. But I knew better now. Safety wasn't a place. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a person. It was a choice, a moment, a decision you make when something feels wrong, even when you can't explain why. I thought back to that night in the parking garage, the cold air, the fluorescent lights, the moment Ethan grabbed my hand. "Don't take us home." Such a small sentence, so easy to ignore, so easy to dismiss. If I had smiled and driven home, if I had trusted routine instead of instinct, I wouldn't be standing here now. Neither would he. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. The world looked the same, but I wasn't, because now I understood something I hadn't before. The most dangerous thing in the world is not the person you don't know. It's the one you trust without question. And sometimes, survival doesn't begin with strength. It begins with listening. Even when the voice is small, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it scares you. I turned off the light and walked away from the window, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. If this story made you pause, listen closely. Sometimes the smallest warning is the one that saves your life. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling and regretted it? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, real, intense, unforgettable, hit subscribe and stay with me.